All right, closing out our evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are already at the end, and I hate the end of storytelling shows, but we do have one more great story for you, and it's by Natalina Lopez. When I asked Natty what was the one thing that she was not going to miss about Yale, this is like really disconcerting to me. She said, the thing that I'll miss least about Yale is the Yale health room that overlooked the cemetery. Why is there a cemetery at Yale anyway? She says, overlooking the cemetery where the nurse practitioner fed me cheeseburgers and pizza when I had mono. She says, frankly, Yale health in general was terrible, but she doesn't have a grudge at all over that, so. All right, how about a huge round of applause for our final storyteller of the evening, Natalina Lopez, ladies and gentlemen.
So my dad's favorite thing to talk about is financial independence, probably because my mom spends his money on gardening supplies. So when I got to Yale, I knew I immediately had to get a job. The weekend of freshman move-in, my parents and I were sitting at Wall Street Pizza for my goodbye lunch. It was the last time I'd see them before the holidays, and also the first time my dad informed me of a weird student loan under my name. He did not clarify how to access it or who exactly I was paying. He suggested getting a job as soon as possible to pay it off. My mom said, let us know if you need help. He said, she's an adult now. And then they both said, okay, good luck. And I was alone and scared. I sat there with the knowledge that I needed to do work-time study for students with financial aid to pay off a large amount of money, even though Yale had given us a large amount of money. It was a paradox that I did not understand or investigate further. Why didn't I investigate? Well, the truth is, I'm not very detail-oriented, so it's surprising I've made it this far. It's usually an employer's biggest fear, so I usually list my weakness as I like to get things done quickly, which happened in this instance. I told myself, put on an outfit, learn to use the college printers, and print out your resume. So I put on a sheer blue shirt, took my resume still warm in my hands, and walked toward Broadway Street. Now, in retrospect, Broadway feels like a distinct choice, but it was not. I simply walked in that direction and discovered it. The street did have a lot of restaurants and retail stores. I was drawn to American Apparel. It was clean, sunlit, and had minimalist advertising, which to a non-detail-oriented person, the simpler the better. In some of the images, the models were not even wearing clothing, so I thought, cool, less to sell. The manager took me to the back room for an impromptu interview. She asked me to define my sense of style in one word. I said, quote, dangerous. Now, dangerous would become more accurate when I tried to wear flip-flops and crop tops in the New Haven winter. But in the moment, everyone, including myself, cringed. Somehow, I was still offered the job, and I accepted. Later, I would realize that this was stupid. I would discover an entire Yale website for Yale student jobs, the kind of jobs where you only slightly had to work, but everyone was okay with it. But at the time, I thought, cool, I'm ahead of this mysterious student loan before everyone else. Everyone else thought, you got a job before you knew your classes, that's super dumb. Dumb or not, I started doing weekend shifts at American Apparel. The work at first was very therapeutic. I organized clothing by size, did laps on the sunlit floor, and ate Pop-Tarts under the stairs when I got hungry. They even played Mariah Carey songs on loop, so I got to learn a lot of lyrics and also the next song in the loop. But after 8 hours a day, the only person I wanted to hear say touch my body was my crush on cross campus. If you didn't get that, that's a Mariah Carey song. All I Want for Christmas Is You to Know That. And if you did get that, we belong together. Anyway, as you do, I started to get involved in the store politics. And by that, I mean the store drama. And by that, I mean there was a Cold War in that American Apparel. I also happened to be taking a class called Cold War at that time, so I consistently compared the real one to my microcosm. It all started when I requested to work weeknights in late September. I on a Tuesday in particular, I was sent to close up the basement, where I met two very cool but also aloof employees. Let's just name them Will and Sasha. Now, I know you're thinking, okay, like how cool could they be? So I want you to imagine the most stylish person you know, and then multiply that by the American Apparel aesthetic, and then multiply that by an 18-year-old who did not know her sense of style. So to me, Will and Sasha were gods. I was also very bookish and timid, so I worried about how we would communicate. And at first we kept our distance, but then our relationship slowly evolved into a semi-friendship. We were kind of like honeybees. I would bring them clothes at the end of the night, we would have a quick chat, and then go back to our labor. And we were kind of unified under the same mission, under the same queen of consumerism, so it all worked out. Until one day, either Will or Sasha saw me speaking with the associate manager upstairs. The associate manager was like a very smartly dressed business guy. He always had like a long pocket watch, and he was either extremely confident or extremely insecure because he never spoke to anyone. But one day he opened up to me about his fashion plans, and we shared a laugh or two. When I went down to the basement that evening, Will and Sasha asked me to choose a side. It wasn't that aggressive, but they did explain that the associate manager and the manager were evil, that they kept them in the basement doing busy work and more manual labor required jobs, and they never let them work upstairs. They continued to list these grievances and also complain about the unfair working environment. I was understandably confused, but also excited by the rising conflict. So when I walked home that evening, I thought to myself, well, if I stay on the good side of the managers, I could see the sunlight, do laps on the top floor, eat snacks whenever I wanted. But if I ally myself with my semi-friends, the right people, then I might be relegated to the basement, where I would not see the sunlight, eat snacks whenever I wanted, or do laps on the top floor. I didn't even question why I was allowed to work upstairs in the first place. I just thought, that's weird. And then the next few shifts at American Apparel felt like a breakup. When the associate manager would ask me a question, I would laugh and not respond as if I were in a foreign country. And then when I went downstairs, I'd feel like I was betraying Will and Sasha simply because they did not have the same basic luxuries that I had that day. So that Thanksgiving break, I sat down at a diner and drafted an email. I want to remind you I was 18, so I wasn't a fully formed person. I lacked integrity. My email explained I was quitting due to school workload. And I sent it and never stepped foot in that American Apparel for the next 4 years. However, the student loan hung over my head. So by December of my freshman year, I had worked so hard to find a new job that I once again was in possession of a position that had nothing to do with my interests. I was a paleontologist assistant in the basement of the Klein Biology Tower. I transported giant nautilus fossils and recorded their measurements. The interview for the job was difficult. I could feel it going poorly, so I had to lie. I said, I love science, and I got the job. I never learned to care for any insights about nautilus fossils. I couldn't even explain what they are to you right now, but I do remember that their shells contain the golden ratio, which seemed quite magical to me. Eventually, I got mono, and that job faded away. My next job at Yale, though, I would do for the next 4 years. It was a book scanner in Bass Library, coincidentally also in the basement. And there was nothing special about that job other than the fact that in the beginning, no one monitored me. I contributed to a large online system of books by scanning them and watching all 6 seasons of Sex and the City. I thought, wow, this is the perfect job. I could even skip my shifts and no one would follow up. Although my senior year, they became a little stricter, which momentarily scared me, but then I graduated. I moved to New York and learned how to access my student loan, which I realized was accumulating something called interest and would continue to accumulate something called interest. So I paid it off in 2 goes, all of my savings gone, done. It was a weight off my shoulders. That same year, though, I received an email from the Silliman Master's office. They said, we received mail addressed to you indicating legal notice. Please send a forwarding address. My heart dropped. I thought, surely Bass Library is suing me for all the time I wasted on those shifts, and even the skip shifts. And so I hesitantly typed back my address and asked, could you let me know who it's from? No one responded, so I assumed I was going to jail. When the letter showed up at my apartment, it read, on November 14th, 2016, American Apparel and 5 other affiliated debtors filed a voluntary petition for relief under the United States Bankruptcy Code in the United States Bankruptcy Court, and then it's pending under Honorable Judge Shannon and a case number, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone assured me I was not being subpoenaed, but I do not know why American Apparel felt the need to inform me of their bankruptcy with a letter that stopped my heart, or why they continued to update me on their legal cases. But if I had to take a guess, it was either 3 things: an apology for the brief Cold War in the New Haven American Apparel, a fatherly reminder that financial independence is never guaranteed, or I don't remember receiving a response to my I quit email, so maybe I had been an employee of American Apparel for all that time. Thank you.
Natty Lopez, ladies and gentlemen.